Good evening, it's 5:32 on Wednesday, February 12th. I'll call to order this regular meeting of the Cuyahoga Falls City School District Board of Education. Ms. Stoico, if you please call the roll.
Ms. Coco? Mr. Gomez?
Here.
Mr. Harris?
Here.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Here.
Ms. White?
Here.
Ms. Coco is not feeling well this evening, but she's joining us via Zoom. Item B is approval of the agenda. Number 1 is a motion to approve the agenda. It's recommended the Board of Education approves the agenda. The February 12th, 2025 Board of Education meeting. Action by the Board of Education, adoption of consent agenda means that all items are adopted by one singular motion unless a member of the Board of Education, Treasurer, or Superintendent requests that any such item be removed from the consent agenda and voted upon separately.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Thank you. Item C is our opening ceremony. Number 1 is our informational items. This meeting is a meeting of Board of Education and public for the purpose of connecting the school district's business. This is not a public community meeting, although there are opportunities for public participation. If an individual wishes to address the board regarding a topic found on the meeting agenda, the individual must complete a registration form found inside the attendance notebook and present it to the treasurer. Following the introduction of the topic by the board president, followed by board discussion, the individual will be recognized. If an individual wishes to address the board regarding a topic not found on the meeting agenda, they must notify the superintendent and or board president of the topic no later than 3 business days in advance of the meeting. These individuals may share their comments during the board business portion of the agenda. In both cases, the individual will preface comments by announcement of their name and address and limit comments to 3 minutes. All statements should be directed to the board president. No person may address or question board members individually. An unabridged board agenda for this meeting can be found on your electronic device at the address shown on the screen. And for your convenience, hard copies of the board agenda may be found on the table by the sign-in book. The next work session is February 19th, 2025 at 5:30 p.m. right here in the Cuyahoga Falls High School Library. The next Finance Committee meeting is February 25th, 2025 at 8:30 a.m. in the Cuyahoga Falls Board of Education offices, 405 Talmadge Road. And the next regularly scheduled meeting of the Cuyahoga Falls Board of Education is Wednesday, February 26th, 2025, 5:30 p.m. right here in the Cuyahoga Falls High School Library. Now for our Pledge of Allegiance, and welcome Ms. White.
If you'll please stand and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Welcome. Our vision, Cuyahoga Falls City School District, the hub of our community, committed to a culture of caring. We innovate, we create, we personalize education for all. Our mission, every student, every day, every opportunity. The board's strategic plan goals are as follows: safety. We aspire to have a welcoming environment that ensures that the physical and social well-being needs of every student, staff member are met. Academic growth. We aspire to have a significant growth through personalized education for all students. We aspire to improve graduation rates so that our students are prepared for employment, enrollment, or enlistment. Engagement, inclusion, and diversity. We will ensure that every student has access to resources they need when they need it in order to be successful. Technology and systems integration. We aspire to create safe, secure, and efficient technology systems to support high-quality teaching, learning, and district operations.
Thank you, Ms. White. Item D is presentations. We have 2 presentations this evening, and for our first, I will hand it over to Dr. Falco.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. As we talked about last week, we have your, or last time, I should say, probably 2 weeks ago, we have your gifts from our students. They were unable to come tonight, but these are your superhero pictures. And each one is unique and fun. So we want to thank our art students. Ms. Stewart, what art gifts or honors?
National Honors Art Student.
So you want to hold them up for our audience members, Leslie and Terry. And here's Miss Coco.
I can just put this right.
It's awesome.
So that's to go along with our superhero theme, our very own superheroes. And we'll put Miss Coco's up.
I think my superpower is psychic.
Just like
Did they say what our superpower is?
No.
I don't
We
think
get
so.
to like decide for ourselves.
You can, absolutely.
That's cute.
Yes, thank you to our
It's
students
very
for
comic booky.
helping us make your day special.
Hey,
great.
mine's actually
Yours is
not a
hand-drawn.
picture. Mine's not
Yeah.
a picture. See?
I know, you're not like a digital person. That's fun.
Little did they
Thank
know.
That's really fun.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
That's great.
All right.
I almost wore that outfit today.
Presentation number 2 is our financial future, and recognize Ms. Stoikoy.
I forgot to share it with Ryan. Ryan, I just shared it with you. Sorry, I forgot.
Oh, Alicia's.
Good. Thank you.
You want to give her a second one?
Oh, yeah.
For
Well,
Alicia.
yeah.
Oh, yes, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, so what we're gonna go over here is kind of review what you will be approving at the next meeting to comply with ODE. And then after that, we will kind of look at, so basically what we're doing is just that, getting us in compliance with ODE per their requirements. However, what we're gonna go through is not going to fix the problem. So we are going to then, I'm gonna show you guys a couple different options, scenarios type things to look at ways that we could potentially address this. So, alright, this is all this is gonna be, guys, sorry.
Man.
It just is. Yeah, wah, wah, wah. Sorry. So as a refresher, here's what we submitted for the November forecast. If you look at that third year, we were in the red by about 3.8 million. So that's what this plan had to come up with, was ways to get that back in the black. So basically almost $4 million worth of savings. The first thing I'm gonna tell you is that they would not allow us to use the sale of the buildings as a way to alleviate that deficit, because it's not a guaranteed thing right now. There's no contract, so ODE will not accept that as one of the methods or one of the ways to recovery, I guess you could say. So that made this a little bit more difficult, but we've been meeting about every other week with our ODE representative and tweaking things. So I just want to put this up here as a reminder, and then the next slide will show you, this is also where we were at. So 2026, we had about 6 days of cash left, and then going into 27, we were in the hole 21, and you can see it going down. So we would need a revenue increase of 13% to balance by the 5th year, or over an 8 million reduction in expenditures, if you recall. So here are some things. So the way that they have this set up first is some changes, any changes in assumptions from November. So basically, things that we don't necessarily have control over as a district, but have changed since November. So the next section is more things that we can control, you know, how many positions we have, what our budgets are, those types of things. These things are just changes that happened over the course of the last 2 or 3 months. So, you know, we did receive our numbers in the beginning of the year for what the valuation and everything is, and so we had some slight adjustments to all of the areas that real estate is affected because of that. Nothing significant, but they do require that we also pass a new forecast that matches the plan exactly. And so part of the forecast automatically updates these, so they will be included in that assumptions. Another automatic one would be our unrestricted state and restricted state grants and aid. So as we get, as the state starts using updated student count numbers, that affects some of the things that we receive. So even though we're on the guarantee, there are some things that are included in here, like casino revenue is on a per person or per student basis. So when we lose students, we lose a little bit of revenue there. Anytime that like state share and everything shifts, it also is going to end up reducing your restricted, because that is kind of based on that multiplier there. So nothing significant here either. They both kind of actually wash each other out for the most part, but there are some changes. And then the all other revenues, so estimated Medicaid reimbursements, I was really, really conservative in November because I really had no idea what we would receive on a year-to-year basis. We've started receiving some interim claims, and I was better able to assess kind of like what we'll receive in interim claims for the year versus the pay, the true up, I guess you would say, in future years. So those were added in now that I have a better idea. So that did help. That was the more significant change in assumption on the revenue side. But not a whole lot other than that is changing, which it usually doesn't. On the expenditure side, so we had a 2%, and a 2% in 27, 28, 29, as that is when our, 27 is when our negotiated contracts are up. Obviously, if we are in the red, we would not be able to certify that fiscal 27. So we reduced that increase from 2% to 1%, which gave us a savings in salaries and benefits as shown. On the flip side, I have increased our insurance to 15% from 10% in November. I fully expect that it will probably be every bit of that. We have just had some a lot of sick people, a lot of severe cases, we do those renewals with like through February, and so I just don't see, after talking in January, I don't see any massive recovery that's going to change that or bring it down or anything like that. So to be safe, I've increased that to 15%, because that is what they are telling me. So you can see that that has a negative effect on this. And also let me tell you, positives at this point are reductions. Negatives are like against. It's kind of opposite of the way I would normally present stuff, but this is how ODE considers it, is that a savings is in the black because we're trying to get out of the red, so it's kind of flipped. So I just don't want you guys to be totally confused there. So that was it for our changes in assumptions. So go to the next slide. Good times. All right, so now this is the things that we do have control over. Let me preface this a little bit with some of these you will not see necessarily in the plan because I had included some savings in the new November forecast already. So we knew that we were probably going to cut the four content area at the middle school next year because of them combining when we go to the new school. I had already estimated a certain amount for that, so when you actually vote on this plan next week, it won't be everything I'm listing here, but if you can see to the right, I kind of tried to put, where it was, like it was in the November forecast, or it's solely in the recovery plan, or it's a mix of kind of both. And we've talked about these things, but most of these, not all, but most will be through attrition. So there are 3 administrative staff that over the course of next year and the year after will be reduced as a result of combining the schools. One, we have some temporary staff here this year, as you know, on a 1-year contract, so that is included. a secretary position at the high school also in preparation for, moving to the new building. That is a retirement. As you already know, we have not replaced the administrative assistant in curriculum. There's when we changed the base salary to 2% to 1%, some of these miscellaneous things, like stipends or substitutes or just some other things that are based, the home instruction rate and this kind of stuff, because some of them are tied to the base. It affects them a little bit, so it did have a minimal, but a little bit of impact on the salary side when we did that. Next, a media specialist will not be replaced. That is a retirement. There are 3 teaching positions at the high school, and that was a combination of both. 5 at the middle school, also a combination of both, and we believe 2 at the elementary level, where particularly, we're not sure yet. We'll have to wait and see how enrollment and everything shakes out. But you will also see that it's kind of in the narrative that they'll have you approve with it. It basically says, like, you don't have to do all these things. This is like the intended, but there could be changes, from now until then that cause us to have to do more or less, or so it's not like when you're approving this, like you can't go back on it or you can't do anything. But this is just our plan as of this point in time of how we're going to achieve that if nothing else changes. And then these are just the associated benefits for those same staff members and salaries on the next 2 slides. And then miscellaneous, so that was all salary and benefits. These expenditure reductions are in all the other categories, so we've moved some things around. So we will be doing a 10% budget reduction for next school year, so everybody's department and building budgets will need cut by 10%. And you may think like, oh, that's not a lot of money, like $9,000 in purchase services. I obviously didn't include every line item that we have because there's some that are out of our control. Like, we're not going to get to decide we can cut tuition for our special ed students by 10%, although I really wish we could, because that would be a much bigger savings. But this is just kind of what's in our control as far as at the building department level.
Well, and some things are paid for by student fees as well, correct?
Yes, but that's not part of the general fund.
Okay.
So they're in their own
wouldn't be
fee
in here.
accounts.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. And I mean, utilities are in purchase services. Like, we don't get to decide that. We don't have control. In the supplies, there were some movements to our textbook adoption cycle. Delaying math for 2 years and continuing with what we have, the subscription that we have now. Kind of splitting an ELA over 2 years as opposed to 1 year, although that doesn't really affect what we're, the 3rd year here, but that is something else that's on there. Capital outlay, this is also a bigger one in addition to the 10% budget reductions. After talking with Joe and Margie, Brian, we had scheduled to purchase 2 buses each year, 2 new. We are moving that down to 1. They believe we're in a good position right now and that 1 will be suffice for each year. We were going to purchase a maintenance van, I believe, over the next 2 years. We have decided not to do that. The vans that we have are currently in good shape, so we are not going to purchase new ones. And then the DeWitt roof was scheduled for a couple, I think in 26, and in the forecast, and we had the operations building roof this year. So we have decided not to do the operations roof right now and do DeWitt in its place this year with the money that was already budgeted for operations this year. So then there's a savings of what we had projected in the future year for DeWitt.
For supplies and capital outlay, can you extrapolate for us what in there is from emergency levy that's gonna be impacted, cause we've always kind of held to, like, the commitment of that piece.
Yeah.
So,
So to be honest, most of those bigger things, so your textbook adoptions, roof, vehicles, and some technology are gonna be in there. Some of it is, a shifting of just the years.
yeah, if it's still happening within the 5 years, I can live with it. I just need to see that to make sure that I feel like I'm keeping
Yep.
that commitment
Yep.
of the plan. Cause if it's shifting within that 5 years, I can live with it. If we're shifting out of the 5 years,
Yeah.
I need to,
Yeah, I
Do you
would
want it a
say
little
that
bit
the
more
only,
to
the
understand?
only thing that, is not a shift would be the buses. Going from 2 to 1. We had 2 in there really as that's what we've done. It's not necessarily a necessity going forward. It's not a huge part of that emergency levy, but, capital outlay is mostly comprised of our emergency levy fund, so, but the, textbook adoptions, all those things were shifted around.
so I know you're jetting off tomorrow, but when you get back, maybe we could get that info, and then maybe Ms. Johnson over in the bus garage could get us information on like the years of our buses.
I have that, I
If
can
you
give
have
it
that,
to you, yeah.
because that would also be good information to have as well.
Yeah.
Because that might justify that change for
I
us
think
as a
after
board.
these
if
2,
taking that
isn't the oldest
information
like
to the community.
maybe 10 years?
Well, I think the biggest issue we have is we purchased about, I think it was 7 or 8
Yeah.
buses in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
So here we are 10 years old with those buses. So what we were trying to do is replace those 2 a year, so we didn't get to a point where we had to buy 4 or 5 or 6 of them. So that's the next hurdle. Now, those 10 buses, or those 8 buses, I'm sorry, are in relatively good shape with not a great amount of miles on them. Not anything that we wouldn't want to keep and fix.
I think those are our oldest
Yeah,
ones.
so that would just be helpful to have that,
Yep.
because I think it's easy to say that it makes sense to go from 2 to 1, and that we can vote to approve that, but to not have the data to support it, to be comfortable if it's
yeah.
a promise that we made that
Yep.
the voters voted on.
Yep,
And can I ask a question too? The buses are to maintain our current fleet, not to add to the current fleet.
Right.
That we're not trying to keep more buses, we're just trying to keep
No,
running buses that are,
No, we are trying to keep the buses as well. Because remember, in a little short time period, we're gonna add drivers and we're gonna add routes. So some is to eliminate those older buses. And then, we certainly aren't gonna get rid of, like 1-to-1. That's not gonna happen.
okay.
We have to hold on to some, yes.
so then on the next slide, this is overall, so the total expenditure reductions, you can see, close to 2.5 million in 26 and 27. Now, this is not cumulative, this is just each year's savings, so, because again, this is how you're gonna see it when you approve it next week, so I wanted you to kind of see it in the same format, so this is the savings per year, there. So, after that, this is what the forecast looks like now. I will preface this with, you're gonna see about a $40,000 difference, in the forecast that matches the ODE, because for whatever reason, and I don't totally fully understand, but there are some reductions that don't start until 27. And so those are put in like another tab that you can't use those. It's very strange. I still don't really understand. And even Chris, who's a former treasurer, who's our representative, doesn't like totally get it either from the treasurer standpoint. But I can't use those in the like plan you're gonna approve. Like they're there, and we're gonna do them, but they really wanna see what's gonna be implemented for 26 and count all of that and how it affects 26 and 27. So this is actually what it is, right here. but you're gonna see it be about, that bottom line's gonna be about 40,000. So it's only like a $40,000 difference. It's nothing like anywhere near, you know, having any kind of major impact, but I just wanted you to be aware when you do approve that, it is without those things we will enact or reduce in 27, beginning in 27. So comparison here. So now we went from 6 to 16 days cash, negative 21 to 0. Like I said, the next part of this is going to talk about, like, we can't have 0 days of cash going into the next fiscal year. I wouldn't be able to make payroll with the first one because we won't have the cash or the revenue. So now
16 isn't really that good either.
No, it's not.
You're gonna have some tight
Yeah.
payroll periods at
Yes,
16.
yes. So here, instead of 13%, we only need 11.5% of revenue increase, or I think we've cut out about $1 million overall, so 7.3 reduction in expenditures.
So we gotta do both.
So here's what it looks like this is the November forecast, just kind of with all of that. You can see I'm highlighting 6.010 because that is really the problem. That is excessive revenue over or under expenditures. You do not want those to be red, and you can see we are significantly red. Now, let me keep in mind that that's just for the year. It's not like those renewal levies are not inclusive of that. So you would kind of want to add those together, but they're still negative overall in those years. And then this year, or then the financial recovery plan, now you kind of look at this. Again, it's still in the red on that 6.01, but we did get to the black in 27, and ending with about 3 million in 26 compared to, we were at about 1.2 in the November forecast. So a little bit more of a cushion there. And then I think the next one just kind of shows the differences. So these are the differences in changes, so the additions to revenue, reductions from expenditures, and then how it affected the bottom line there. So again, it was 3.84 something, our deficit in 27, and so we made a difference of between revenue and expenditures reductions of about 3.9 million, so a little bit more than the deficit was. And then the next one will show you those cash that I had talked about before. Okay. And you know that I know you've had it with me, you know, but it's not going to stop. The fun keeps going. So, on to this kind of second section of some things we know that are going to happen, and some things that I believe, you know, we're going to need to do in order to stay solvent, because there are not a ton of options for any school district really when it comes to this. So we know we are going to sell these 2 buildings. This is the appraisal amount of each of those buildings, so just sticking with that alone is what we use because we have no idea what it will be, so we stayed there. So I've used at the top what I just showed to you, that financial recovery plan forecast, and what happens then if we sell those buildings for the 3.5. You can see this is very simple math. It just changes years 3, 4, and 5, improved by 3.5 million, a flat amount. So I have 27 by the time, you know, we would sell them and receive the money. I suppose it could be sooner, but I'm guessing not, just to be conservative there. And then the next one is we do have LFI funds that we have had interest on over the course of the last few years. We have a good amount in there. I think right now, I want to say there's like 3 million in excess there. We obviously have to wait till the project closes out, things like that. But, we have talked about paying the debt with those funds if we had anything left over. I used half of that. I used $1.5 million, just as if anything unforeseen comes up or anything like that we would. I was trying to be conservative here. So this is pretty much the same thing. Total expenditures are reduced because we would spend the money out of the LFI for the debt service instead of general fund. Again, very simple math of $1.5 million those final 3 years. And then I believe this is what it looks like if you combine both of those, which is $5 million over the course of those 3 years. So we're getting closer to the black there in fiscal 28, and more of a healthy balance in 27. However, these are one-time infusions. So again, it doesn't solve our ongoing problem of spending more than we are receiving. That is not a totally uncommon thing in school districts. Obviously, there are very limited ways for you to increase your revenue. Especially our two biggest sources are property tax and state funding. State funding is flat, and Lord knows what will happen with this new budget. And the only way to increase on the property tax would be to put on a new money levy. Other than that, there are not major significant ways that you're going to raise millions of dollars there. So the next consideration I kind of want to talk about and show you is kind of our enrollment and our staffing levels, like a history. So here's our enrollment back to 2015. We had almost 5,000 kids. This year, we're down to about 3,750. So over the course of that 10-year period, we've dropped 24% of enrollment. Over a 5-year period, a little more than 13.5, and just over the last 2, almost 4% decrease in enrollment. Again, Ohio public schools are decreasing all over. The pandemic obviously had an impact in some of this, but we continue to decrease a little bit each year. Matching that up with our staffing levels. So you can see back then in like the 590s, and then I believe 2018 is when that RIF was implemented back then, which brought us down to 567. You'll see a drop during those pandemic years, as there were some staff that we didn't necessarily need, as we weren't in the buildings or we were in hybrid, and so we did not necessarily need those services. So think of like our food service cashiers and those kinds of things that are there. In 2023, we kind of start to go back up. So full years of us being back in full. With our student wellness money and our ESSER funds, we were able. We've added social workers. We've added literacy specialists. We've added some things that were necessary because I think they were a little probably slim pickings back in like 2018, going from that large of a cut. But we've added different positions. We've had a need for additional, maybe intervention specialists or paraprofessionals because of the special education population. So you can see that we've kind of gotten back up to those numbers, yet our enrollment is decreasing. And, we have tried over, to make sure that through attrition or that where we can, we are, and we've been doing that. But I think we're going to have to, continue to look at that and address that, because as we continue down that path, I don't know that we can sustain these levels of staffing on a per student basis.
So I just did some math. In 2015, we had one staff member for every 8.37 students. In 2025, we have one staff member for every 6.39
I did that today
students.
too.
So we've increased that by almost 2.0. It's 1.98, but almost full 2.0. Do we have data on what those positions were in 2015 that we could compare to what those positions are now? Because I know that the needs have changed, but it would be valuable to be able to compare what we
yeah.
staffed in 2015.
I don't know that I have anything. My earliest goes back to 1920, when I started keeping track, or when I got here. I don't know if Peggy or them may have something in HR that shows 2015, or I can look and see what else we have.
I think that would be, if we can find something, that I think that would be valuable
Yeah.
to see.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
did we staff in 2015 versus what do we staff
Yeah.
now, and understanding the difference in
Yep. Yep.
the ratios.
Yeah. We will look into that.
Do you mean types of positions?
Yeah, what position,
Okay.
who were we, what positions were we staffing then versus now? Because it's almost the same amount of staff. The
Yeah,
3
it is, just
FTEs
three.
difference.
Yeah, and these are, I will say that part of this too is these are on a per head basis, not an FTE basis.
Okay.
So, that there could be some fluctuation
Okay.
there as well, where it's not exactly the same.
So that would be helpful as well, because like food service, noontime aids,
Yeah.
we had a lot more in 2015. Trying to think, we probably had more like recess monitors then, because we riffed those in 2018 when I was on the board.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so these are just a per head basis, so not necessarily FTEs.
so looking at those positions would probably be helpful as well too.
Yeah.
Do we know why we're losing students? Is it vouchers or?
That's
Okay.
part of it.
That's part
but
of
live
it.
births have been.
Yeah,
if
live
you look
births
at
are
live
down.
births
I mean,
historically,
it's enrollment is really dropping everywhere.
Okay,
And then the voucher
except for
situation
Central Ohio.
does not
okay.
help that cause. I think partially, not as many people are having kids. And being that this, in my opinion, that this is a little bit more landlocked, I think the younger, it's a little bit more difficult for maybe younger families who want something that's newer or want to build, in that could potentially also do that. But overall, I mean,
It's
birth
down.
rates are down and vouchers are up.
And our reputation, which we're trying to improve as well, impacts it as well, because a lot of people are using Cuyahoga Falls as a starter home community, and they're having
True.
babies, and then their children get older, and then they're moving to other communities and enrolling them in school there, and that's happening more than we would like to admit, but it is true. And so as we're working so hard to improve our academics and seeing great growth there, and our reputation for our academics continues to improve, hopefully that will positively impact our enrollment as well.
And one other thing this year too is through a combination of things, we're at about 100 less open enrolled students. So whether they didn't reapply, whether we decided that we would have to add staff and so we denied, or whether we had asked them to turn in paperwork that they never followed through with. So we're down about 100 students this year just in open enrollment from last year. So then the next topic, which I know is it can be a very dividing issue, but part of the reason for the staffing versus the enrollment, especially at the elementary level, is that they are spread across 6 buildings. And so where you could potentially condense, you can't because of the numbers in each of those buildings. What I've done here is I took all 6 elementaries, And I took a 3-year average. So this year, the year before, and the year before that. 3-year average of everybody in these positions that are listed, and from all the elementaries. So that is the average principal salary across all 6 buildings for the last 3 years. I did not, well, I did include everything here. So there are some things that I did not include. So if you go to, so, you know, you have your basics here, and then the benefits that also go along with them on the next slide. And then if we look at our purchase services, so I didn't include everything in here. There are obviously some things that are still going to happen regardless of whether there's 1 building or 6 buildings. So I tried to really pull out just the things that potentially would impact if there were to be a closing of an elementary. So this is extremely conservative based on what really is attributed to each building as far as costs. So you can see substitute teachers, secretaries, staff mileage meeting, not a lot, you know, but nursing services, we have a nurse there, the utilities at the building, repair maintenance to the building, those things. Again, it doesn't add up to a whole lot here, but those are the things that could potentially be impacted with the closing. Same thing with supplies. Again, not a large amount, but we still have to buy supplies for the same number of students. We still have to buy textbooks for the same number of students. So even though we may charge them, you know, appropriately to the 6 buildings, there is that cost is not going to go away. So again, I just tried to look at each individual building, and this is only about $29,000 on average per year for supplies, but it is something. And then the next one is capital outlay and other objects. Obviously, other objects, not a lot, on average. But then your equipment or building improvement. So building improvement would be all of those major, you know, repairs, whether they be roof or parking lot or those kinds of things. Are the building and site improvements that have taken place over those years. Tech equipment that may have been purchased for particular buildings. Obviously, that is not inclusive of us buying Chromebooks for every student, because again, those numbers still exist. And then some equipment that is just bought on a per building basis. So that is what it boils down to on average, so 3.1 million. So before we go to the next slides, which will show you the impact of this, I want to tell you that I did not use that 3.1 million number. We are not going to be able to get rid of all staff, you know, as far as salaries and benefits go.
Now, Christy, that's for 1 building, correct?
Yeah, that's the average
one
of, yeah,
building.
that's
Okay.
the average per building.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
We're not going to. So when I factored in these costs, I took the salary and benefits at half. So half of the savings. Because, you know, within there is a principal, a secretary, like those things are, but we are not gonna be able, we're not reducing all the teachers at 1 building, or all the intervention specialists, or all the paras and things. Could there be an elimination of some? Yes, and so I just use half of that figure. So when we look at this, so there's again, our financial recovery forecast, and then the impact of the close of an elementary has on our 5-year forecast. You can see in 27, we're just right under that. Revenue is under expenses, but it's under $1 million there. And then how it affects the forecast going forward is much more than just those one-time infusions of the sale or LFI. So then if you combine all 3 of them, we're not too bad. So we would go to almost a $7 million cash balance in 27. And mind you, I implemented this in 27, obviously not next year. I considered the close of an elementary in the 26, 27 year, being that it's that third year that we're really honing in on. We would be in the positive in fiscal 28, and not too far off, but almost a $10 million difference in 29. And 29 is far enough out there that, you know, there are things that'll change, and, you know, that number won't be what it is. Could it be worse? Yes. Could it be less? Obviously, I don't think we're gonna continue, you know, at 15% for insurance, and I have 8% continually forecasted, but we're not gonna have to take 10 and then 15 and 18 and 8 and 8 and 8. Like, there will be a lull in there somewhere where we kind of right size, and right the ship basically with these larger increases. And that's kind of because we've had such an anomaly the last 2 years insurance wise. We are trying to make sure, like with this renewal, that we don't overcorrect either, that we don't raise it so much and then we go back to a normal year next year and now we've got, you know, too much and we're going to take a zero, like we don't want to do that either. So we're trying to gauge here, you know, what that looks like.
I was say, it's not the first time we've discussed this possibility of closing an elementary school, so it's not new news. But, and I don't think that anyone on the board doesn't realize that the day is coming that we're going to have this conversation as our enrollment continues to decrease. Sustaining 6 elementary schools becomes more and more difficult. Where I think we have our strong disagreements amongst one another is what information we would need to make that decision and then to be guided by that, because there are so many different ways you can look at it. If you go by size, we have 3 elementary schools that are much smaller than the other 3. If you go by age, we have 2 elementary schools that are around that 100-year mark, but they're of different sizes. So there's a lot of different ways to parse things out and in which to form opinions on. And so I think that's what creates a lot of the disagreement. I don't think it's the reality of the situation. I think it's how we go about that conversation and making those determinations when we make the determinations. And that I think is where our disagreements come from, not so much the reality that unfortunately enrollment forces a reality, and we're seeing Ravenna just closed an elementary school, Lakewood's closing an elementary school, Columbus City Schools is closing several schools, Akron is condensing its footprint. It's a reality right now in education.
I think the other thing is the neighborhood, because we have neighborhood schools, and we got to look at that too, of where and which ones we want to keep so that we can continue that tradition as well.
Well, the problem is we all want to keep them all.
Well, we do, but we
This
know.
is why I only put the word
One at
elementary.
least.
Yeah. We all want to keep them all. The reality is that unfortunately
I know.
we're coming up upon the fact that we're going to have to make a decision eventually. And then the other piece is what factoring in, which is a huge unknown because we don't know where we're going with this decision, but whatever costs there will be in closing whatever building this might be, because we don't know what will happen with that. Will we be closing a building that we see as a potential future site for an elementary school? And if so, then we have to figure out what we're going to do with a closed building and work with the community in the meantime on that. Because nobody wants a vacant building.
No.
And we'll just be honest, nobody wants a vacant building owned by us because we don't have a great track record.
Unfortunately, and we have talked about it, but as I went through this exercise and looked at the number of things that we're doing just to get to that 80,000 point, and realizing 80,000 is not enough. in that third year. We're obviously gonna have to do more. This is the reality now. This is the biggest bang for your buck, unfortunately, as far as impact on the forecast, year over year over year, on the expense side. And so I know it's a difficult conversation. I've had it in other districts. It's not just here. There are a lot of feelings attached to things by both community, staff, all sorts of things. But realistically, and that's my job to give you the hard bad news. I think that's where we're at, other than potentially passing a new money levy, and that's really not under our control either. So we can say we're going to, but that doesn't mean it's gonna happen.
Ms. Stokely, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So what year, when you're looking at those savings and potential, savings and righting the ship as far as if we were to close a building, what year did you start that in again?
26, 27. So that third year, we would close that the beginning of 26. It would not be, elementary would not be open in 26, 27.
So through this school year and all of next school year, we would have 6 elementary schools.
Okay, all right, so that was my question, and I guess my other question, because there is so much to consider and discuss, like Mr. Gomez said, in regards to this, if that projection is something that we decide as a board needs to happen, and this might be more for you, Dr. Selico, when would that decision need to be made by, potentially, just so we have a timeline of, when we need to fit in these discussions and have these hard conversations about what may or may not need to happen.
Yeah, I would gather if we were to make a decision for the 26, let me make sure I'm saying this right, 27, 28?
26,
27.
27.
27, I always screw these dates up, I always get yelled at. 26, 27.
Not next year, the year after.
Yeah. I'm guessing, the earliest, the latest would be January of 26, but if, I would suggest probably having these discussions the fall of 26. Right, am I saying that right?
The
No,
fall of
fall 25.
This fall.
Fall of 25, yeah. Yes.
And I already personally have some ideas I'd like to share about how I think we could go about these conversations to try to engage the community so that you don't feel left out, because I think that's going to be very important. So I would propose if we could pencil this in as a future agenda item to discuss like a decision-making process and framework, and we can all have some time to gather thoughts on that, and then pencil this in as a future agenda item. President Coco.
Yes, I agree with that. Thank you, Mr. Gomez.
And then we could keep going on with finance.
Yes,
Okay.
Let's do it.
yeah.
Okay. The last part is just kind of some scenarios about what ifs on a new money levy, because regardless of any combination of those things, at some point in the future, this is going to be a reality as well. So just a reminder of the different types of levies and what their uses can be for. The only one we do have permanent improvement half mil, but that's dedicated to the 612 building. So we don't have a general permanent improvement right now, but we do have operating, emergency levy, and bond. The only operating that is not continuing, there's one remaining, and that will be up this November for the earliest renewal of that one. And currently, for us, 1 mil is a little over 1.1 million. So we have over $1 billion in tax revenue. So,
We have over 1 billion in valuation.
yeah. So, this is kind of looking at all those scenarios I just proposed and what the kind of estimator says you would still need if you did this. So looking at just the financial recovery plan alone, and when you do these, it goes out a few more years, so you also will see 2030 and 2031 on here, in order to gauge that. So this is what it looks like, just the financial recovery plan. You can see there's that 81,000, all pretty much the same numbers with the addition of the two columns. So in, yes, so they look at the revenue surplus or deficit, not necessarily what our ending cash balance is. So for that in 27 is about 2.8 million, which is the equivalent of 2.58 mils. Any other shortfall would need annual levy millage trending towards 6.99 mils. So you can see, depending on where it's passed, there's a kind of a high range and a low range, because obviously as you get further out into the years, you know, it shortens the revenue cycle, gets pushed out as well. So in all of these that you're gonna see, so the lower millage would trend more towards like a 3-year levy, so a sustainment of like 3 years, you know, would get us there. And then we'd either have to look at something else again. And the higher end is going to give you more of like a 5-year life cycle on a levy. So, and not saying that like that's the length of the levy, that like we would need more new money, you know, over and above those, depending on at those points, the 3 years or the 5 years.
How much does a mill cost per 100,000? We know that.
What do you mean? Say that.
Like,
again.
how much does a mill cost a homeowner per 100,000?
Oh, well, because it's 35,000 on that. So $100,000, you have. I'd have to do the math in my head here. So their assessed valuation is only 35,000.
Yeah, 35%.
And 1 mil is really just that in a sense, is 1 mil. So 1 mil overall for us is that 1.17 million. Like if you split it among everyone, but that $35,000 is just that percentage. You know what a mil is times 35,000. So whatever it would be.
Well, I guess I'm trying to figure out how much this would like cost our residents.
Yeah.
To put that in context of like.
Yeah, I can run
2.58
those
to
with
6.1.
some of these numbers
Yeah.
on there to see what that would be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. We can do that.
So I see like the combination and kind of think of like a number that would be most palatable.
And now keep in mind, so operating levies, emergency levies go into the general fund. If it were to be a permanent improvement levy, it would not go into the general fund, but it would alleviate expenditures in the general fund, so it would have the same impact, you know, as far as that goes. But it would just be in a different area than on the revenue side in that case there. So the next one, we'll kind of just take the same order that, you know, I showed you the other options. So this would be with the sale of the buildings. As you can see, you know, the range changes a little bit, but not a whole lot. Again, it's a one-time infusion, so really the only change there is that the low range mills, you know, went down to 0, but still the 5.05 and the other numbers remain virtually the same. This next one would be with the LFI funds. So we would be short about 1.3 million here with those LFI funds, which is about 1.24 mils. And so we're looking at almost 6.73 as we move out. That's very similar to, again, it's a one-time infusion. Both of those kind of are similar along the same wavelength. Both of these together, you're still looking kind of at the same thing on the next slide, I think. Yeah, both of them combined. So you're still kind of looking at the same thing because it's a one-time infusion, so it's not solving the problem long-term out in the thing. It just lowers that kind of lower range mills you would need if you did it in 2025. So you can see that, you know, again, how those things, while they're helpful, long-term, it's not fixing our problem. And then finally, with this, we're bringing it down a little bit. So we're looking at, like I said, a little under $1 million of a deficit spending, which is about 0.87 mils, so not even a full mil. And so at the most here, as we're getting out towards 31, you know, we're looking at like 5.11, but you can see we range anywhere during the years from a 0.87 to about a 4.74. And then if you combine all of these, you pretty much get the same thing as you have above, except again that 2025, because there's that infusion in 27, you wouldn't, you know, need to necessarily go in 2025 or you know, have a large amount pass in 2025. And that's all I'm gonna bum you out for today.
Any additional questions at this time?
Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been a bummer.
Tough.
Thank you very much for putting all that together with all the different scenarios. I know it took a lot of work to do that, but for us as a board to be able to be thoroughly educated in these decisions, it was necessary for us to see all that, and I just appreciate all the work that you put into that.
Thank you.
Thanks, appreciate it.
That brings us to item E, Treasurer CFO's business consent agenda. It's recommended the Board of Education approves all items listed in the Treasurer CFO's business consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Comment?
I'm sure there's donations.
We have the minutes from last meeting
Yes.
and 9 generous donations.
All right.
Something.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, please call the roll. Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Thanks.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Ms. White? And I vote aye.
Great.
Brings us to item F, Treasurer CFO's business. Ms. Stoiko, your comments.
I gave you my terrible comments. But one thing, last week I went and spoke to two of Ms. Palmisano's classes, which I've done before, about the treasurer role, and ironically enough, you know, they can ask questions, and one girl raised her hand and said, "Do you have kids?" I said, "Yes, I do." She's like, "I think I know one of them." And I said, "Oh yeah?" I said, "What?"
Which one?
She said, "Morgan." I said, "Oh, yes, that's my daughter." She's like, "We used to play basketball together." And I was like, "Wait a minute, what's your name?" And she said her name, and I was like, "Oh." So I went to high school with her dad and uncles. Her uncle was closest to me in age of all of them, and my mom was his second grade teacher. And she's actually lived down the street from us for a period of time, and she said, "I know where you live." She's like, "This is really weird."
Oh, that's cute.
So I had a good time. They asked a lot of good questions, and I actually got a little thank you from both of the classes today. There was one girl in particular in the first class. She had a lot of questions. I was intrigued by that. So she had a lot of good questions too. So just asking about things, or asking things like how much is in the athletic budget, or
I bet I could guess who it was.
and
I won't.
and things like that. So I always like going over there. It's always a fun time, and getting to talk to the kids. And I always tell them that I didn't even know who the superintendent or treasurer was when I was in school, or that they existed. And I only really knew about this position because my parents work in public education, or else I would not. And so I was trying to do some recruiting for this profession because there's not many out there. And as an organization with OASBO, we've been trying to really do that and go to job fairs for colleges and high schools and stuff and just make people aware that we even exist. I mean, most of the time I prefer that they don't know that I exist. I'll leave that to Dr. Selko. They know
Yes.
she exists.
We had that conversation today.
Yeah. Yep. So, but yeah, I was trying to do a little recruiting there, but we had a good time.
Thank you. Alright, brings us to item G, Superintendent CO's business consent agenda. Dr. Selka.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. It's recommended that the Board of Education approves all items listed in the superintendent's consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, Dr. Selka.
Yeah, thank you. Number of items this evening. First off, we have a recommendation of a staff member who's unable to be here this evening. Her name is Marley Fagan, and this is a result of some increase in enrollment in our special needs classes. So, just to tell you a little bit about her, Ms. Fagan earned a bachelor's degree in education with a major in early education from Kent State University, as well as her master's hours in early childhood intervention specialization, also from Kent State. She is licensed in both pre-K 3 early childhood as well as pre-K 5 intervention specialist. Ms. Fagan comes to us with 4 years of experience and is extremely excited to join the Preston family, elementary Black Tiger family, mid-year to serve as the intervention specialist. In addition to that, we have some other positions, van driver, we have some leaves of absences, we have a resignation there with Ms. Rosen in our office. We also have some job descriptions there. I know there's been a lot of discussion about this in communication, just to also inform you of what our vision is here, that there's some thought, some ideas going into maybe restructuring a little bit of our literacy program. The literacy coach position that you see there already exists. It would just be a change in title for those literacy specialists, because we would like to call another position, should we consider that, the structured literacy specialist, and just to avoid confusion, one works with teachers and one works with students. So that's some clarification there, and then again, that's to bring some real targeted assistance and highly trained professionals to working with our students, but again, we're still working through that. And then lastly, the early childhood positions for our preschool teachers that we will need to hire in our preschool integrated classrooms. We also have listed there our CCP. The changes are listed there in your explanation there. Nothing too major, a few minor changes there to the agreements. Our NeoNet agreement is to, we have a staff member who's on long-term leave, and as a result, we wanted to replace him, and we did so through NeoNets. And then we also have the ESC there of Northeast Ohio for some professional development for our transportation department. We have contract again with LearnWell, which you're familiar with, and then transportation for a student for ed alternatives. And I believe I hit them all. Thank you.
Questions or comments from the board? On the job descriptions, I don't have any issues with anything in the job descriptions, but historically, when we approve a job description, then the next day, the jobs get posted. So this is really the opportunity to ask the questions about what's gonna happen with these jobs. So I've had a lot of questions. One, I'm still cautiously skeptical about our savings in preschool and whether we will save money. It's based on a projection of what it would cost for next year, and we really don't know what it would cost for next year. So we're going forward with that, but we don't really know. So what I would ask of our treasurer's department is to keep track of what our actual costs are for our preschool as it rolls out, because we've been given two different now assessments and budgets of what preschool would cost, and now we know we're going forward with only the special needs with the like peers portion of it. So I would like us to commit to keeping an actuals budget so that we can compare that to what our projected budget is, because as we know with our finances, we have to keep an eye on these things, so,
Let me tell you, I have not assumed any savings.
okay.
So that forecast that was presented assumes the same cost to be conservative.
That makes me feel better. But in the budgets, we're seeing an assumed savings, so that's why I wanna see
Yes.
that get realized.
Yep.
So I would like to know that we're tracking
Yep.
that, and that makes me feel better. And then for the, structured literacy specialist, my concern is for the 90 kids that we won't be servicing in the new structure. I like the new structure because the data supports the fact that our kids aren't making the growth that we want to see, and that if that's the goal, then we need to do something different. So I support that. My concern is about those 90 kids that aren't going to get this specific type of tutoring in the new format, and what specific communication their families are going to get. Because I appreciate that there's going to be something different for them, but that's 90 families that are historically, the way that they receive the information is going to be, my kid was getting something, now the district's not giving it to me anymore. And I'm very, very concerned about how that's going to be received, and in this world of education competition, what decisions then those families will make. So that gives me a lot of consternation. Those 90 families, we don't want to lose those families. We want them to feel that their children's needs are being met here in this district. So that communication piece could not be more critical. So that is my concern. I support what we're doing because the data supports that this will be a more impactful model to help our children with early literacy, which is going to set them up for achievement all throughout their K-12 career with us, which is what we are here for. But I'm just worried about those 90 kids and how their families are going to receive this information, because it's going to feel like something that their children were given as a support is being taken away from their children. And that really, really worries me. And so just, we really have to get that communication perfect. So, again, no problems with the job description. It's just what we do as we go forth with posting these jobs, and then how we execute all of this. Thank you. Anything else?
Well, since you brought that portion up, and then, do we know what model we are using? Because we have the 9 Title I, and then there was the 6, and then there was the integrated model. Have we decided, like, cause that's the first that I had heard about, the integrated model, and which,
Well, I think the
was
reason for
intriguing to
that,
me.
well, the reason for that was we were sensing maybe some, maybe some, not pushback by any means, but certainly some questioning.
some
So I think we were
yeah.
trying to give you some hesitation, thank you.
Yeah.
So I think Mrs. Hausman was trying to provide you with some alternatives. It's not our preference, I think we'd rather
It's
probably.
not cost effective either.
Yeah, no, you would actually not be saving, yeah, I mean, because of the breakdown, I think
we
was.
technically wouldn't be saving
You'd
money
still be
switching
less
to the new
people.
model either, though,
Yeah.
so it's not.
No, we're not doing it to save, this,
Yeah.
I wanna be clear, that's not
Yeah.
what this is about. This is about trying to try something different that we think will be more impactful for our students, yeah, at the same cost,
Right.
very little difference. Yeah.
Again, I support it. It's just my concern is for those 90 students, because we will hear about that, and it'll be in the community, and it just has to, that communication
And I think
of what they're going to receive instead as part of that MTSS Tier 2 model has to really be perfect. It has to be so effective. Sorry.
And I think that you really hit the nail on the head, because as a parent, and my student was receiving tutoring, and now even I'm not receiving it from that same model, but now I'm receiving it in a different fashion, but it doesn't feel like I'm receiving the same thing, because it's being received in the classroom it's just in a different manner. I'm not getting pulled out to the next class, you know, it feels different, so, and a good explanation, I do think that's important, so that they don't feel like they're losing something, because they're really gaining something, well, many people are gaining, I'm sorry, I don't have the right words in my brain to come out my mouth. In the new model, thank you.
And I think hitting parents with data is not always,
No,
I mean, we appreciate the data because that's part of our job is to analyze the data
Yeah.
and make good decisions based on the data, but parents don't always appreciate the data because they don't look at their kid as a part of a holistic piece of data. That's their child. That is their number one priority.
Yeah, I think I would just say this. I think with the amazing work that our team has been doing, I think with the addition of Mrs. Eman and Mrs. Hausman, and they spend a lot of time and energy. I watch it. I got to be part of the two of them tag teaming me today, and their passion for telling me about literacy and writing and their models that they're creating. I mean, I can just say that there's a real concerted effort to make sure that we are not leaving any children behind, and that they will get services. It would just, as you stated, Mrs. Schaefer, will look different, and in a different way, but we're not going to overlook those struggling learners. I can assure you of that.
Oh,
So,
I think we all believe it. That's why we're going to vote for it here in a second. But it's just getting that, making sure our
It's a
families
change.
get that.
yeah, and we'll make
feel
sure we
that.
do a good job of communicating what it is we're doing to parents.
I appreciate that, thank you.
Anything else? Please call the roll.
Ms. Schaefer?
Bye.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Ms. Coco? Oh, Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Just so you so you know.
She would have voted for it, I'm sure. Brings us to item H, Superintendent CO's business. Your comments, Dr. Salgo.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. I'm gonna just spend I'm gonna mention one thing, and then I'm gonna spend a bit of time talking about some legislation that I want to make people aware of. First off, I wanna mention, I know Mr. Harris mentioned last meeting that it's the start of Black History Month, and now we're midway through. And I've asked our principals to share with me what they are doing to celebrate and honor our friends in the during Black History Month. And so as a result, we have a number of different things out of the buildings. Some of the traditional things that you would expect, the morning announcements highlighting different famous Black Americans. We have some reading and listening activities with biographies and choice boards, listening libraries. They're learning about different business leaders in some of our business classes, specifically Curtis Moody, who was a famous architect, and they're talking about the different professions. And we have some morning meetings being held, introducing famous Black Americans and focus on their lives and accomplishments. We have more biographies where they're embedding some music and artwork into the month, and trying to think what else was unique here. Putting together short presentations with facts about, again, famous Black Americans. So just wanted to let you know that we are not losing sight of that in our classrooms.
Cool, appreciate that.
So I want to now take just a moment to speak about some of the things that we are seeing in our executive orders as well as here in the state. First off, want to share, so I've been doing a lot of work lately trying to keep up and probably spending hours, with not exaggerating here, trying to keep up to speed with what's happening, as well as keeping us informed and also trying to make our best decisions for what these orders will mean for us as a district. I will say that after listening to various attorneys as well as lobbyists and advocates, that I'm starting to put together a picture here, though we know that this is still tentative and subject to change. I will say I want to thank publicly three of our two senators that I met with, Senator Rogner and Senator Weinstein, as well as Representative Bill Romer, and I will be meeting with Representative Derek Hall next week. I appreciate their acceptance of my invitation to come and speak and be able to talk about some of the issues that are concerning to us as public educators and us here in Cuyahoga Falls, and they were quite receptive, and I again appreciate their time. What we are seeing at the federal level are many things. If you're listening to the news, you've heard. Some people in my life have said that they choose not to listen, and I don't have that luxury. I wish I could turn a deaf ear, just because there's so much coming at us, and it's a lot. But I feel like I have to educate myself, so I can in turn educate others around us and in our organization. So the first that I want to speak of is the freezing of federal funds, and like what that impact could have on us as a district. So it kind of sent people in a frenzy when we talked about freezing federal funds, and that is, we were happy to hear that Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, SNAP, some of those things were not, Social Security were not going to be impacted. Those things that directly go to individuals, we were happy to hear were not affected. But we are concerned about our federal funds, mainly being our Title I funding, Title I through IV, our IDEA B. That provides us $3 million, close to that, that we use for teacher salaries, PBIS, special education programming, professional development, intervention services, supplies, and curriculum. That all could be impacted should funding be changed or impacted as a result of the federal freeze here, the funding. As it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, we know that this is a priority for the administration. I think it's been made pretty clear by the president, as well as in our state of Ohio, from what I've heard from our lobbyists and attorneys, that Ohio is pretty much similar to a copy and paste of what we're seeing at the federal level. So we can expect to see the same initiatives trickle down or be initiated in our state. And that at the larger picture, we heard today that the president has stated he is looking at illegal DEI initiatives and programs. Not sure what that means yet. We're waiting to hear what that is. But there are mandates and policies that are going to certainly affect us as a district, and some of those things could be surrounding our positions, our board policies, our clubs, our curriculum, our course offerings. Many of those things could be impacted, and not so much that it is, I could spend a lot of time, and I won't, defining DEI and the true meaning of what diversity, equity, and inclusion means, and how it's being interpreted sometimes by people in general or our politicians, and what that means, because it's often equated with critical race theory. That's one thing that you'll continue to hear. That is one thing that has been tried to be eradicated. And it is also in the state of Ohio, Senate Bill 1 is going to be focusing on higher education in their DEI initiatives, but we expect it to trickle to K-12 education as well. We're told that if we stick to the true history, meaning like the content that is factual in history, again, that probably could maybe questioned by some, but what does that exactly mean? But those types of things would not go away. Black History Month would still exist, for example, but we are to be careful. There's been some guidance about how the question and challenges will come not so much in the courses themselves, but in the theoretical conversations that may take place in the context of the content in the classes. And so that could mean, people may challenge us there, and we are to be careful not to shame students, is what we have been advised, that there's some language in there about shaming certain groups of students to feel a certain way. In Ohio, we also passed the Parents' Bill of Rights as well as the Bathroom Bill. We've heard of these. Again, this is impacting our transgender students and perhaps those of certain sexual orientation. There are a lot of ramifications, again, for these two bills, and we are complying, but we need to look at, again, what's in our course of study, how we, our bathrooms, for example, we talked about the last time, and what they need to be single gender. The president has stated as well, there are two sexes. They are moving away from the word gender and replacing it with sexes, and that being male and female. And we are to proceed as such. So there are a lot of questions from our staff as to the safe space stickers that we have, classroom flags, celebrations, how we handle our students' identity and sexuality, and how we need to notify parents, like what all that is going to look like. So there are a lot of implications for the work we do under these bills. So we will, again, be astute in keeping up on what that will look like. We've learned a little bit about the voucher expansion and school choice. We know that this is a priority both at the federal level as well as our state level. The impact here, as we know, we heard it this evening, directly related to our funding, but as well as the expansion of vouchers. And I shared with our legislators that I am very much understanding and a proponent of allowing students to have vouchers for students whose zip code dictates a different type of education that perhaps their families wouldn't want for them, and that they want them to have opportunity and choice. And I'm very much in favor of that. But since it's expanded and we've spent as a state over close to $1 billion in vouchers, I think we've gotten too far away from the intent of the law, and I shared that with our legislators as well. Finally, the dismantling of the Department of Education clearly has raised some concerns. We're following this closely. What we have been informed of today is that there are a couple of different options here, that there can be a complete elimination of the department, and that could include the funding. The second thing could be that they just redistribute duties and money and sending the funding back to the states. And then the third would be the reassignment of duties within the department. So in other words, taking some of those components of education and putting them to the Department of Labor, of Justice, of Health, of Treasury, etc. So at a minimum, what our folks have said is that we can expect to see a reduction in positions, at the very least in the department, but any one of those things can happen that I described. So impact is unknown, really, at this point. We would just have to let this wait and see how this will impact our district. And I have encouraged my staff, as my administrative team, as well as staff that I speak to just, remain calm as we can, and let's get educated. Let's find out truly what these things mean. I don't want us to jump to conclusions or to react prematurely or needlessly. So let's just wait and sit and see what happens. And as a district, I know we will comply with all laws. Some may run contrary to our district and vision and mission, but we will comply to what those regulations are. I did want to mention just lastly that Title IX has been changed. Not necessarily, I don't know if this is in order or not, but I know they're returning to 2020 Title IX regulations. So there are a few changes there, and gender identity will not be protected under those regulations. As we go back, it will not be a definition under sexual harassment. And the grievance procedures will remain unchanged, though. So,
just a note on that, though. Our non-discrimination policy in the district still stands. We had a discussion about this at our policy committee. So while discrimination under gender identity will not rise to a Title IX violation under federal law, gender identity discrimination is still not permitted in our district under our non-discrimination policy and would be dealt with under other portions of our policy. So that's important to note here in the Cuyahoga Falls School District.
yes,
And I think there is something we can do. We can call our state reps. We can call our federal reps, senators in our House. We can call these people over and over and repeatedly again and let them know our concerns about getting rid of the Department of Education and the other things that they are trying to do. I did hear today that there is a new budget and they are cutting Medicaid, and they're trying to cut, of course, the Affordable Care Act. So we need to have our voices heard. So please call.
I'm very concerned for our special education students
too.
with this Department of Education, because people
Yes.
who are such strong supporters of federalism that they probably never read any of the Federalist Papers. that they want everything to go back to the states' rights don't understand that special education law comes out of the federal government. Most all of our special education funding that we get specialized for comes out of the federal government, and the state of Ohio doesn't want to administer those funds
Right.
because they don't have people to do that at the Department of Education and Workforce. They would have to hire new people that wouldn't know how to do this because those aren't their funds to administer.
Right.
So it'll cause chaos in all 50 states.
Exactly.
We have people at the federal government, the Department of Education, that know how to administer these funds. And even if we continue to get these funds, there'll be delays because nobody knows how to do this. And it will harm in particular, our special education students. If nobody knows who's enforcing special education law, there'll be less protections for these students because IDAA and all these other laws are federal laws. That's where this all came from in the first place. So.
And the Pell Grant too. I'm sitting here today and got my degree because of the Pell Grant and because I was poor and on welfare, and I went back to school on a Pell Grant. Got my degree, got myself off of welfare because of that opportunity to receive. And that's something else that a lot of our kids are economically challenged and could maybe use a Pell Grant. We can't let that die.
That's right.
Thank you.
So my closing statement would just
Sorry.
be that, I appreciate your advocacy, and I think we're all kind of struggling to work through this, but, you know, we're gonna stay true to what we do here in the district, and that is to educate all students every day, right? And so regardless of, we'll follow the law, but we'll also, continue to do and live our mission of making sure that every child feels warm, accepted, loved, and educated here. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug.
That brings us to item I, board business. Number one's
We gotta
addendum.
vote, didn't we? I don't think we voted, did we?
We voted on.
That was
her-
just my comments.
Those are comments.
I'm
We
They were
voted on
lengthy,
that.
I know you probably got
I'm
lost
sorry.
in them.
No, we're good.
That's
Item I, board business, number one's addendum to program of studies. It's recommended the Board of Education approves the addendum to the Cuyahoga Falls High School program of studies for the 2025-2026 school year.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Did we want Ms. Hausman to briefly just mention it? I think it's worth mentioning.
Sure. So we are proposing a math support class that will help our students while they are in their Algebra 1 course. So it's a proactive model instead of a reactive model like a credit recovery. And so this is something new that the state is allowing us to give credit for this course, which also helps them help support towards graduation. We studied a model in their school district, and we're making some refinements. We're working with the senior department as well. And so we're excited to kind of be building this together. I meet with the Algebra 1 teacher teams fairly often, so I met with them third or fourth time this year, and I just met with them, and we've been talking and sharing and vetting these ideas with them, so they're very supportive as well. So we've had teacher feedback. I think we also in there included about that there were some courses that were requiring students to pay for like a credit recovery model. And so we, Dr. Selico has felt strongly that that is not something that we want our students to, have to choose to do. And so we also wanted to support a true AP structure, that if students are taking AP course, that they would be expected to take the AP test, because you never know. They might do well and pass it, and we also want to ensure that the rigor of that course is there for all children. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Algebra 1 is one of the two courses that you have to score that 684 on as part of your graduation requirement. So this is helping with our goals of getting students prepared for graduation. And reviewing some of the materials was really exciting. In Troy High School, which is where they're modeling this off of, every student that was, helped with this model got to that 684. They had a 100% success rate.
That's good.
There's also want to thank Mr. Pask and Ms. Hershey, who I know have done a lot of work on this as well, because I was really excited to read all about this. Mrs. Mahalik as well.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. All right, please call the roll.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Thank you. Number 2 is the overnight field trip for student councils. Recommend the Board of Education approves the overnight field trip to Camp Wainoa for the Cuyahoga Falls High School Student Council.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Thank you. Number 3 is resolution and contract with Bus Movers and More LLC. It's recommended the Board of Education approves the resolution to declare that 2 school buses property are no longer needed for school purposes and direct that the buses be sold per policy DID. And is recommended the Board of Education approves the contract between Bus Movers and More LLC and the Cuyahoga Falls City School District.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? I think we already requested just to be informed of how much we make off of these sales. Okay. Please call the roll.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye. Thank you. Number 4 is future agenda item. We said that a process for elementary closing engagement would be a future agenda item. Are there any other future agenda items to bring up at this time? I think the gifted presentation's on the next agenda. It's on the next agenda, Ms. White.
I know.
I just want
I
to
know.
make sure you
Thank
knew
you.
that. Okay, that brings us to number 5, committee reports. 612 Construction Core Team, Ms. White.
Yes, we met on Thursday, February 6th, and there's a lot going on, but the 612 building, the buildings 1 and 4, stairs and dining space are complete, auditorium stage is poured, and they're starting to excavate the sloped seating. Masonry is going on and continuing, except for the auditorium access area. They'll get to that. Carpentry, drywall paint is all going on. Building 4, block fill paint is ongoing, and building 4, the framing and hanging drywall in auditorium lobby is continuing. The flooring, the 1st and 2nd floor is going on, plus 3rd floor also. Glazing, they're doing this on the windows, the interior light installation, and the caulking of the exterior. The roofing, again, it's that metal coping on top of the wall for the panel installation, and the plumbing is ongoing also. HVAC is also going on, and then electrical technology still going on, getting speakers and those kinds of things, the cabling for tech and things like that are ongoing. The stadium, the turf installation will start next June. I think this June is what, is that correct? This June?
Yes.
Okay, and the naming rights on field will be stitched into the turf, so it's not just, painted, it'll be stitched in there, and we should be ready for the first game, hopefully. And then we're doing the multi-part videos where Ms. Stewart is creating videos on the academic area, and then Ms. Selico will be going and talking about the intro and the vestibules and the security systems, and then the arts, athletics, the planetarium, things like that we are, not we, but they are working on. So, and then I think that's about all. I hope I'm not missing anything. So, yes, so pretty much all on that one.
Thank you. Board policy.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Did you say naming rights, something's getting stitched into the?
Yeah,
Into the turf,
name
yeah.
of whoever gets the rights
Oh,
for
you
the.
didn't say someone, okay.
I'm
I
sorry,
thought I
for
missed-
the,
okay, yeah.
the stadium, it'll be stitched into the,
Should we get a donate?
turf.
Oh, should we? Okay.
Yeah, we don't
should-
have any-
should
I thought
we?
there was
Right.
big news coming, okay.
Not yet.
No, not
big
yet.
news yet. We're working on it.
We're just letting them know that it will be stitched in there.
There's a timeline for having that.
There is,
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
so, yeah.
Board Policy Committee, we met on Monday. We'll have a few coming for first read for the next meeting, and one that we have to rescind due to state law and federal guidance, not because of our beliefs. So you'll see that one.
Okay.
Anything from you, Mrs. Schaefer, on that?
No, it was very exciting. It was my very first one.
Business Alliance Council?
Yes, we met, was that yesterday?
Yes.
Yeah, yesterday.
It was a long day
Yeah.
yesterday.
So Dr. Selico provided an update on the naming rights event. Yeah, talked about some of the feedback and, the tours that were given. She went over the transition plan for the new campus, some of the ideas there. Ms. Dudones gave a presentation on graduation requirements. I think one of the same presentations we received. Just updates across the board, requirements, seals, stuff like that. We also heard from some elementary school principals about how they're working with CTE. Ms. Scarlett talked about how DeWitt is working with the ag program. I was pretty excited to hear a little bit about that. And then, like I said, continued discussion about how kids in elementary school can start thinking more about careers. And Dr. Selico, I can't remember who mentioned this, Shark Tank event on February 28th?
Yes, Stark State.
Stark
It will be
State,
at
okay,
Stark
yes.
State,
And
yes.
there's judges that are still needed. And I
Yes.
put on here board members, question mark?
How
So,
fun.
so yeah, it's just like a Shark Tank event. So I wanted to mention that to you all. But that's pretty much it. And then everything Dr. Selico spoke about this evening about some of the laws and changes.
I did judge for the Odyssey of the Mind, which was challenging,
Oh.
but it was a lot of fun. And I also judged sometimes for Power of the Pen,
Okay.
which was another one I felt more suited to than Odyssey of the Mind, but it was fun.
Yeah, Shark Tank, it sounds fun.
It
Sounds like
would,
good.
probably would be.
District Wellness Committee, Mrs. Schaefer?
We met on, it seemed like a long time ago. It was February 3rd. And we're still following up on the original work we did with going over the well set and do our policies line up with, like the requirements that they have set out. It's and you get points for if your policy X, Y, and Z and how well it's written based on what their parameters are. And I think that ours they're pretty good. And so we went over it how they fit with the well set, and then we were looking at what the actual policy, how we're carrying it out, how it's actually happening in the buildings. So we talked about smart snacks too. And we talked about, in the past, why is that so hard to say? Smart snacks. In the past, it was difficult because there was like a little list and it was all like, things from like PepsiCo, and we thought, wouldn't it be fun to have like a list of snacks that were like from Aldi, from Giant Eagle, like things that you could buy locally and not just from like PepsiCo company. But it's made by a calculator, so you take what the item that you're buying, and then you take the data from the item that you're purchasing and put it into like their little nutrition calculator to make sure it's a smart snack. So it's not like just a cut and dry thing. You have to do math numbers. So it'd be nice to have like a little list of things that are like at Aldi's that you could just pick up. And then they split some subcommittees, a staff wellness subcommittee and a school meals subcommittee. Somehow I didn't end up on either one of those. So there's still time though, I guess. So we meet again in April 7th.
Thank you. Ms. Coco, are you able, and do you want to give a foundation report?
I can just real quick, I'll just speak that we have 59 students that have turned in applications for the scholarships this year. The teacher deadline for those grants isn't until the beginning of March, so those are still coming in. But those were the main two pieces for that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Harris, Legislative Liaison.
Yes, just a few updates, and again, thank you, Dr. Selico, for the overview of, some of the stuff at the federal and state level there. Going back to the Senate Bill 1, again, that was the higher education overhaul. That did pass through the Senate just before this meeting, I believe, so that'll be heading to the House. I'm just going to do a quick overview of Governor DeWine's proposed budget here. I'm not going to go over every piece of this, but I'll highlight a few things here. Everything education related, of course. Funds will be continued, or funds to be continued, phase in of the years 5 and 6 of the Fair School Funding Formula. Reduce that formula guarantee to 95% in fiscal year 26 and 90% in fiscal year 27. Continue state investments in school choice programs at levels similar to the current ones. Earmarks $12 million in lottery funds for science of reading literacy coaches, and requires schools with low rates of proficient readers to focus more funding on literacy supports. Invest $30 million over the biennium to create a new school bus safety grant program based on the recommendations of the Governor's Ohio School Bus Safety Working Group, providing $4 million to increase the annual bus driver training requirement from 4 to 6 hours and widening access to advanced driver training. Invest $7 million in each fiscal year in competitive grants to support career planning and workforce readiness initiatives for K-12 students. Creates a driver training in schools grant program at the Department of Public Safety, funded by non-medical marijuana sales, tax revenue for school districts to fund drivers' education at their high schools. Continues an administration's work on school-based health, expanding the number of school-based health centers in high-need counties and providing resources and technical support to these health centers, and then invest $50 million over the biennium to create a new vision services program called Ohio C, SEE, which would ensure that K through 3 students who fail vision screenings receive comprehensive eye exams and glasses if needed, which I thought that was really cool. And just a couple updates of new bills that were introduced. These are all kind of related to property taxes and taxes here. Senate Bill 66. This bill would include emergency levies, substitute levies, all inside millage and school district income taxes in the calculation of the school district's effective millage floor. Senate Bill 81. This bill would authorize property tax freeze for certain owner-occupied homes, including for senior individuals who are over 65 years old and senior owners of manufactured homes. House Bill 30. Let's see, with this companion bill, Senate Bill 3 would phase down the state income tax to a flat rate of 2.75% over 2 years. House Bill 42, this bill would require certain agencies, including schools, to report data concerning the citizenship or immigration status of persons with whom they come into contact. And then, Mr. Gomez, you had mentioned, and I didn't have that one on my list. Did you want to mention?
Senate Bill 93, it's proposed by Senator Brenner, who's the chair of the Senate Education Committee, and it is to establish a single statewide property tax and increase state sales tax to fund schools, eliminate state scholarship programs, establish a school financing system that calculates the statewide amount of per pupil funding that we paid to the public or charter non-public schools in which a student's family chooses to enroll that student, and eliminate each school district's ability to levy property and income taxes.
Thank you. Yeah, going back to the governor's budget, just so folks know, that's not a for sure thing. It will change. There's already been some skepticism from Speaker Huffman as it relates to that phase-in of the Fair School Funding Formula, so stay tuned. I will keep everyone updated.
The issue is, even with the phase-in, if you're keeping the inputs at 2022, it doesn't so the governor wants to reduce the guarantee amounts from 100% to 95 and 90, which would hurt our district, which when you get back from your trip, we'd love to see what those projections are, because that'll be important as we look as well, because I think that's probably likely to happen, because it's a reduction in school funding, so I think it's likely to happen. But the problem is, if you have an issue with the guarantee, a way to get us on a path to getting districts off the guarantee is to put in there that the inputs get updated every year. Because if you're actually updating the inputs and fully funding the Fair School Funding Plan, you're more likely to get more districts off the guarantee. So you're shooting yourself in the foot. It doesn't
if you
make,
remember, I
the
had
whole
that.
thing together doesn't make sense, because if your goal is to get districts off the guarantee, the best path forward is to
Right.
change the
I think I
inputs.
showed that graph when I did the November forecast, where the numbers of when we kept the same inputs and how many districts were on the guarantee, and then how many went off in the years that we updated them. And then how many jumped back on when we didn't, and I mean, it went down significantly when we updated those inputs.
And I think if you update the inputs and then you say, yeah, and then we want to wean people off the guarantee, I get that from a policy standpoint. Even if it doesn't help our district, I wouldn't go down there and advocate for it. But I get what they're trying to do from a policy standpoint. It makes sense. I don't love it if it doesn't help our school district, because that's my first priority. But it still makes sense to me if you're actually doing it, all of it at the same time.
Yes.
But when you're only doing it halfway, that's what frustrates me.
Yeah, the formula itself, the Fair School Funding formula, is not going to work until it's truly work, until it's fully implemented and those inputs are updated. Or, for example, if you are not gonna update those inputs, then stop updating the property tax. That's every year we're getting an update. It's the enrollment figures are new averages every single year, property tax every single year. That's what's really makes it more reliant on state funding, is because you're updating those valuation numbers every year. You're not updating the costs, and so you're becoming more locally dependent. Your state share is not as big. That's reducing your restricted funding as well when your state share is not as big. If they would, at the very least, match those, like one goes every year and they all do, or they're on the same schedule of updates, because with the rise of valuation over the past few years, in addition to not doing those updates, that's why so many push back to the guarantee.
And our new lieutenant governor is the person that wrote the Youngstown Plan, House Bill 70, which allowed the state to start taking over public schools, which again was such a colossal failure that they released those schools from state control. And not only was the Youngstown Plan a failure that decreased academic success in Youngstown, the person that the state put in charge of the Youngstown School District was so corrupt that the entire Youngstown School District is under FBI investigation.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
Just
hooray,
fun public
hooray for
schools.
us.
I mean,
So that's the plan he wrote,
Jim
Yeah.
Tressel, by the way, yes.
oh, yeah.
while we're legislatively updating ourselves.
Yes.
It's
lot
just
of
the
it's
truth.
yeah,
Appreciate it.
right.
Yeah.
They just need to fund public schools for crying out loud. Okay.
Student Achievement Liaison, Ms.
Yes,
White.
we met, for the DLT, we just went over the norms of active listening and, being respectful and having a data-driven discussion, never base your discussion on personal opinions. I would never, no. Focus on trends, questioning and clarifying, of course. And then, so this was all to get ready for this Friday's PD, Professional Development Day. So they're gonna, when they get into, they'll be here at the high school, but they'll meet with the building. And they'll put their staff into teams of no more than 5. And, they'll create, parking lots with chart paper and Post-its for concerns, comments. And then they're gonna look at the data. And the data, basically, they're looking at will be disability data and free and reduced lunch and gifted data for their own building. So they can kind of look at these things. When we were looking at it, we didn't know like how many of each ethnicity there were in a building, so it was kind of hard to tell if, okay, is gifted only here and not over there, we're not doing enough, but they will have that data, so. Yeah, I know, because you don't have the whole picture, so we couldn't tell. There were some things that we did notice, too, so, I mean, I thought it was really interesting in what they're gonna do on Friday. The gifted team also met, and the gifted advisory, we only meet quarterly, and so that was today, and it's very interesting what our new, Tammy, I can't think of her last name.
Balco.
Thank you. What she is doing with the middle school honors placement rigor and trying to figure out what tests could we use to screen them, either the Iowa or the other one that we are using, the COGAT. And then just things like that. We're going to try to maybe identify science and social studies for gifted, but that's a little tricky to do. And it just involves more testing, which we don't really want to do, but, you know, to see how many kids are maybe gifted in those two areas. And we might be able to use Iowa screening. I'm not sure if that would work, but again, and then also teacher recommendations or, you know, through a checklist might help also. Professional development, they are looking at a gap for closing gifted and letting teachers receive some training on that. The testing is going on. And let's see, enrichment opportunities. We're looking into reaching out to Kent for the Reading and Writing Festival, which was really awesome at the middle school levels. For anybody that was involved in that, I was, and it was really something that kids have to read books. And then they go to Kent State and they write or talk, and they get to meet an author of one of the books that they read. So it's really neat how they work that out, and we're going to check on that. But she has instituted Power of the Pen, which is a writing program for our students. The Dobama Theater residency, they act, and then they write plays themselves. The singer-songwriter Roots of American Music and Stop the Hate essay contest, which is simply an essay, but we will find out if any of our kids did well or how they did in April. The 24 math contest and young authors, they, right now it's just for our kids, but we'd like to maybe take that forward in time for other districts that we could compete against. The high school, she went over the difference between CCP and AP classes. For parents, not many attended, but it is on the website. So any parent or student that's interested in, you know, the differences there can look on under the gifted on our links. There is more training needed in March coming for Naviance and how we can use that better. The differentiation in regular classrooms, for example, especially at the high school. We don't do a lot of that, and we suggested maybe putting like how to get a student that maybe isn't interested but gifted, and how maybe you could let them go a different way on a project or a writing assignment, things like that, and list things. There's the ACT that we went over. There are practice tests available for sophomores, even though we don't give it to our sophomores. We do with our juniors, but there are practice tests that are free and available, and they're pretty good. They tell you what you missed and didn't. There is a new gifted newsletter, and it's on the site if you go there, and it's, you know, kind of interesting, all the things that they are putting together and doing. We're trying to figure out how to recognize gifted students, whether that should be an award night or just maybe a shout out on the PA systems. We'll see how that goes. And I think that's about all for the gifted committee. So it's really good, really doing a lot of good things.
Thank you. If it's not already in someone's Friday notes, can we have, from the full board, have that green section with the data on disability, gifted,
that.
and whatever?
For the
Thank
PD
you.
on Friday,
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, I think we'd all like to look at that.
It's interesting,
It's
but
a-
we don't have the totals, like I said, for all the kids.
Would you like all the data that you're gonna see?
I don't know.
Well, because if you're looking by
How much is
ethnic-
that?
we don't know how many Asian or we don't know how many American
I'm
Indian
fine with
or,
this.
yeah.
Yeah.
So and we don't know male and female either. So it kind of, I mean, it was interesting, but you kind of want a little more data to
I'm
understand
fine with
it.
the high level.
But it is interesting to see. Yes.
Brings us to number 6, comments. Mrs. Schaefer, you're up first.
Well, it has been a busy couple weeks, going to a lot of things and doing a lot of stuff. We were invited to elected officials breakfast hosted by Congresswoman Amelia Sykes. I was able to attend that, and that was the first time I was ever able to attend something like that. So, and she kind of just talked about what she does and like what committees that she was on. I don't think the committees were selected yet at that point. And like what the game plan is and everything. And it was very interesting. And then rushed over to Preston to do some Valentine's for vets. It was a lot of fun. I like doing that kind of stuff. I like coloring, putting stickers on things, and making Valentines. That was a lot of fun. Got to go to a couple bingo nights. This was a lot of fun. There's been a lot of heaviness happening, and I got to just, the last couple weeks I got to do a lot of fun things in the school, so I did enjoy that, so a little bit of both.
Thank you. Ms. White?
Yes, I keep forgetting to bring it up, and it happened in December, but we got to actually go and read to the middle schoolers at Bullock and Roberts, and boy, was that fun. And they were so good. I will say, they were very good kids, and I think almost all of us participated, but I don't think anybody mentioned it. So I just wanted to say thank you to Miss Gideon for inviting us all. It is a real pleasure to work with kids of any age. The band show, percussion only, the all percussion is Thursday, February 20th, and their art show is the 21st. So I just mentioned those things. And then sadness again, unfortunately. We all know about our colleague who just passed away too young. But I have another one, Mr. Sebastian. He was such a good man. He worked with us at the high school. He did Project Love, which just thrilled me. He and his wife Yvonne, they just were wonderful, wonderful teacher, wonderful man, good friend to me. I don't know why he liked me, but he did, and we used to talk and so on, and I really loved him. So our hearts go out to their family and our prayers.
Especially his daughter, who still works for our district.
Yeah, it's just, no. That's all I have.
Thank you. Ms. Coco, did you want to share anything?
I am good for this evening, thank you.
Okay. I'm up next. I am, along with other board members, went to the naming rights night, got some good information, as well as the opportunity to tour the building again. I also, along with many other board members, stopped by the Valentine's for Vets at Preston, along with Congresswoman Sykes. I got to go to the Lincoln Bingo night last Friday night, along with my nephews, who won a few items. They're very excited because they won 2 free tickets to COSI. So they're really excited to get some science in this summer, a little free trip. Thanks to the Lincoln PTA for that. And then last evening I was at our career night here at the high school, and my work always comes in as part of the career night as well. In OSBA world, yesterday they had a policy chat that I attended. Our Black Caucus had its first meeting of the year, and I attended. I'm on the Northeast Region Executive Committee, and we had our first meeting of the year as well. And then I attended our 8th grade orientation here at the high school. I think that was last Thursday. I have to say, it was a little underwhelming. We spent the majority, probably the most time at the 8th grade orientation watching a school links video with a voiceover. It was not very engaging. It was pretty bad. It was not a good evening. You would have been disappointed. I think nights like that.
Orientation, you said?
Yeah, for our incoming freshmen.
Oh, so freshman.
So I think nights like that are just critical evenings for family engagement. And I think as I look at Ms. Stewart, who's very passionate about family engagement, we should look in the future at making sure those that are planning these nights are plugging her into them. Because I was sitting there, I was like, Ms. Stewart, with like 10 minutes of effort, could have made this way more engaging for our families. It was a sit and get, and there was just no engagement. And I think we have to realize that not every family that was there is committed to sending their kid to our high school next year. With vouchers, and there's a student sitting behind me, I know the family, and I know that they're touring private schools as well. So we have to sell our school at these nights, and we were not selling ourselves very well. And I know with like 10 minutes of work, Ms. Stewart could have really made it so much more engaging. So not to put more things on her plate, but I know she's really passionate about family engagement, and I was like, she could have made this so much better without having to do all of the work. So I just want to toss that out there. And then again, just emphasize that I think on the other end of that, just we need to sell ourselves on the kindergarten end as well, because we have to make sure that families are also touring private schools, especially in January when there's a certain religion that has their blank schools week, and families are touring those schools in a very personalized way, that we need to be pushing our kindergarten program earlier and earlier to compete, because it's a competition now. We need butts in seat as we saw tonight, and we're gonna lose those folks if we're not selling ourselves a little more. And we have a great story to tell. All of us believe in this school district and that we have great things to do, but if we're not competing when people are out there looking, we're gonna miss our opportunity to sell ourselves. So I appreciate everyone receiving that feedback. But again, I was just like, Miss Stewart with 10 minutes of feedback could have really made this so much better. She would have been like, this is not engaging. Well, like anything. I was like, she could have, I was like, and she's always talking about family engagement in our updates. And I was like, she would have been like, how are you engaging these people? So credit to you for the work that you're doing, that I was like, I immediately thought of you and was like, oh, she needs to zhuzh this a little bit. So thank you. Mr. Harris?
Thank you to the art students for our wonderful superhero art there. I really appreciate that. I too was able to attend with my colleagues, the Congresswoman Sykes event over at Preston Elementary. Writing, decorating cards. I haven't colored that much in a while, and then I think I went home and my wife and my son, she had a big old piece of paper spread across the table, and he was just doing this, and I sat there and I kept coloring, so I got in that habit. But it was really, and I appreciate the Congresswoman for everything she does for our veterans as well, so thank you, Congresswoman Sykes. And then Dr. Selko, you read my mind. I was going to see what was happening around the district as it relates to Black History Month, so thank you for sharing that. I'll give a reminder to folks this month. We take time to honor the achievement, the resilience, and the contributions of Black individuals throughout our history. It serves as a reminder to acknowledge past struggles, to celebrate progress, and to continue advocating for equality and justice, remembering that Black history is American history. So thank you all so much.
Thank you. Bring us to item J, executive session pursuant to Ohio Revised Code, section 121.22G1. It's hereby moved the board adjourned to executive session, to consider the employment of public employee or official.
So moved.
Do you second? Okay. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Hi.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
We're in executive session at 7:42 PM.